Welcome to the podcast of St. Basil the Great in Brecksville, Ohio, with homilies, talks, and interviews relevant to your Catholic life. God bless you and enjoy. Welcome back to the St. Basil the Great podcast. I am very excited to have Father Liptak with me here today. And if you're watching this on YouTube, then you might have an idea of what we're talking about today. You can also see mine and Father Liptak's really awesome matching quarter zips. But if you are just listening on audio, then you don't see that we have a beautiful image here today that Father brought of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And if you haven't heard, the United States bishops, in honor of I honestly don't know how to say that word. It's like sesquicentennial or something like that. I keep seeing it written out. I've never tried to figure out how to say it.
You could just do the American thing.
Until like I'm on the podcast, but it's the 250th anniversary of the United States. And so the bishops have decided that they are going to this year on the Feast of the Sacred Heart, which is this year is June 12th, Friday, June 12th. They are going to, actually, I think they're going to do it the vigil going into it. They might actually do the consecration on the 11th, but they're going to consecrate the United States to the Sacred Heart of Jesus.
Yes.
Which is a wonderful, beautiful thing. And I'm going to be so honest, Father, I don't really know that much about the Sacred Heart of Jesus. It's not one of the devotions that I, have particularly been super drawn to in the past. And so I'm just really excited to hear because I know it's something really meaningful to you.
It is. And to your point, the Sacred Heart devotion is actually the second most popular devotion, the first being the Holy Rosary. So the Sacred Hearts, to your point, we hear about it and maybe it's been passed on to us by family members, but what is the Sacred Heart? What is this devotion? And I think to your point, the fact the USCC bishops decided this year to consecrate the United States to the Sacred Heart is going to be just a really graced opportunity for all of us to understand a little bit more about this devotion, but at the same time, how can we incorporate this into our daily lives? Because again, the word consecrate just means to set apart. And what are we setting apart? But our lives, our stories, and being drawn deeper into the very life of God in a particular way. So I think this will be a truly graced opportunity for not only just us as Catholics, but as our whole entire nation, as we go deeper into that unconditional love of God that He has for us.
Yeah. And that's exactly part of our hope with this podcast. We have some things coming out in the bulletin, and we're going to be celebrating the Sacred Heart as a parish on Friday, June 12th. We'll have morning mass. We'll have a little bit of music, but it won't be much longer than normal daily mass for those that have to hurry up and get to work after. And then we will be having a time of adoration and then praying together the consecration prayer in just a very beautiful way. And so being able to enter into the Sacred Heart of Jesus, to learn about it, to, kind of grow in this devotion, it's great for me because I'm we're preparing for this podcast. And I told Father Liptak, I was like, honestly, I'm not going to really look up that much. I've done some reading to be able to make the bulletin pages and stuff like that, but I'm not going to look up that much because I really want to learn from you, and I want to be able to hear your heart for the heart of the Lord, and be able to, just understand with everyone else that's listening more about the Sacred Heart.
And I think to your point, that's what we absolutely do not want to get lost in by doing this podcast and this whole entire year, because we could get so fixated on the theology and the rubrics of things that we get so kind of lost or bogged down by particulars that it's not always about what you know, it's always about who you know. And Jesus Christ wants you to experience His Sacred Heart, not just to know about it or to be able to do this certain regimen of prayer, but it's God's desire is always for you to encounter Him in a very personal and real way. So we will absolutely give you a little bit of history throughout this podcast, a little bit of spirituality, and maybe just some practical things that we can also do as we encounter this wonderful year.
Yeah, absolutely. So where kind of does this come from? in the very beginning of not the very beginning of the Bible, that's in the beginning. God created the world. That's not quite what I'm going for. But in the Gospels, like, we see John the Evangelist lay his head on Jesus's
Mhm.
chest, like, right there next to the Sacred Heart. And, um, from the little bit of reading that I did to,
Yes.
make the bulletin page, um, they were saying, like, okay, like, this is kind of like one of the first
Yeah.
instances, like, Jesus, like, allowed us to draw close to his heart because
Mhm.
wherever we see the beloved disciple, we can put ourselves. And so Jesus allows us to draw close to his heart in that instance with John the Evangelist. But there's someone and other events that have,
Mm.
like, really, like, popularized and really helped us to understand even more about the Sacred Heart.
Correct. Well, and even to your points, like, yeah, that's really where we see this movement of this devotion beginning. But even throughout the entirety of sacred scripture, the word heart is just used extensively. And I think when we hear some of these words, we already bring these preconceived notions and ideas, and which is a good thing because it gives us a sense of understanding. But
Mhm.
to even just to break down that word heart, I think it's even really important before we go here because the word in its Latin, it's cor,
Mhm.
C-O-R, which just means, and we get our English C-O-R-E from, but to be at the very center of.
Mm, mm.
So, and we see God has a heart for humanity. We see throughout the Psalms the movements of the heart, the frustrations of the heart, the love of the heart. Like, we see heart all over the place. And one of the passages that's really tied into this devotion is Jesus looked at the crowds and his
Love
heart
them.
was moved with pity for them. So we see at the very core of Jesus Christ, there is a pity and a sorrow for humanity and amidst our suffering and everything we're going through. So we really see the heart of God and the person of Jesus Christ. There's like a movement there in which he wants to approach us and for us to approach him. And you're right, at the Last Supper, John the Evangelist was reclining at a table and he rested his head on the heart of Christ. So we really see that being a very, to your points, an invitation that all of us are supposed to be like John the Evangelist in that moment. But what would come later is during his passion, his suffering, as you're going to see from this image, all these really the marks of his martyrdom for Jesus Christ, a crown of thorns, and particularly the lance.
Mhm.
And he would actually, the one who thrusted his lance into the side of Christ, actually had a conversion when he was covered in blood and water. And tradition is that became Saint Longitis,
Mhm.
who was converted in that moment. So we see really the heart of Christ now opening up for humanity. And then obviously after the resurrection, Jesus Christ approaches the apostles and he invites Thomas, put your hand into my side, feel my sacred heart. So we really see this like drawing closer of the Sacred Heart to humanity in very intimate ways. But to your point, John the Evangelist is really that model for essentially to rest, to stay here, to abide here in my presence. But so I guess what's most important too is that we don't do anything superficially or the fact that we Catholics create things up, but they're always biblically founded. And they just then from scripture be able to expand and grow in expression because so many of these things that Christ has done is doing, they're timeless.
Mhm.
And that's the important thing to always know that even particularly with this devotion, it grew over time. This wasn't just something very immediate, but as humanity grew and the church grew and everything else in culture shifted and adapted, we really see this devotion coming more and more to life to essentially have God encounter his people in a particular way.
And so when was that it kinda really started to come alive?
Uh, There's debates on kind of where it started, and
Mhm.
it was around 451 at the Council of Chalcedon, actually, when we, for the first time, the church dogmatically defined Jesus Christ, and what we would say is hypostatic union, which means God is fully God and fully human.
Mhm.
So to really understand this incarnational presence of God and his abiding presence in a very human way that continues. So we see the church growing in this way of understanding Christ's humanity more and more, not just this spiritual second person of the Trinity, but his truly abiding real presence with us. So once the people of God started really encountering that, really understanding it, it wouldn't come until actually centuries later with Saint Gertrude the Great in the 4th century.
Okay.
And she was in prayer, and it was on the feast of John the Evangelist
Oh.
that she had an encounter of prayer in which she was resting her head in prayer on the very heart of Jesus. And she in prayer specifically says, I heard his heartbeat.
Mm.
So that's where we can actually credit her with really being the one who actually is starting to get these revelations of the Sacred Heart and how it is meant to be something we're all invited to. But what's really beautiful about that is his heartbeat.
Yeah.
So the fact that it's not just this static image that you see here, but it is a living, beating heart that is still alive.
Well, and I think that sound of a heartbeat is so like moving. So even yesterday, we were kind of just talking in the hallway, and on your door, Father Ryan's door, Tommy's door, for when you guys have meetings with people,
Mm.
you have a little sound machine.
Yeah.
And you were just playing with the sound machine to find like different things, and you switched it to like baby mode from like, I mean, you guys usually just have white noise or whatever.
Correct.
And you're scrolling through all the different things, and then you came on the heartbeat. And when the heartbeat sound came on, which is a very common like sound to put on for newborns, because as they were in the mother's womb and kind of heard that heartbeat, like it's very comforting for them. When you put the heartbeat sound on, though, like there was this, like this very like audible, deep, like reverential, even just joy and peace that came from like just hearing this. I mean, who knows whose heartbeat,
Right.
but this heartbeat sound. And so, yeah, to pray with that and begin praying with, Jesus, if I'm so close to you, I can hear your heart beating.
Hmm.
Like, allow me to get there. And I mean, if you need to put on a sound machine to have the
No,
heartbeat
of
sound,
course,
like, go
yeah.
for it. But like, to pray with that and
Yeah.
say, like, Jesus, I want to be so close to hear your heartbeat.
Oh, and to your point, I mean, it was, there was about, 5 of us in Tommy's office, and then, like, you're right, when that noise came on, like, we stopped our conversation, like, it was just like
Yeah.
huh, and it was just for a moment, you're right, it was just, we all just listened to that sound machine, but to your point, how something so personal to us, kind of we just forget and we lose the intimacy of just the profound sound
Mm-hmm.
of just a heartbeat very rhythmically. And to your point, it was a very graced moment, I think, for all of us in there
Yeah.
that day.
Because it was not the same when the waves were crashing or it was pink noise and
Correct.
white noise or whatever. Like,
No,
but the heartbeat, it stopped us all.
correct. Yeah, and so we see with Saint Gertrude the Great, so her sharing these revelations, then a French priest, Saint John Eudes, in the 16th century, 17th century, he himself had an apparition of the Sacred Heart, where he really is the one that's credited, and you can look up images of him of holding the Sacred Heart that we even see here today.
Mm.
This revelation coming to him, and Saint John Eudes, he actually is credited with a lot of the prayers to the Sacred Heart, the Mass saying to the Sacred Heart, the theology of the Sacred Heart. So he really took this revelation of Jesus Christ that he encountered in prayer and really began to allow his intellect and his talents and his gifts to really provide these really beginning treasure troves to the entire church in so many ways. So we actually credit St. John Eudes with a lot of the theology and the prayers that we get from the Sacred Heart.
That's awesome. Yeah. Again, have I heard the name a couple times? Yeah.
Yes.
Did I know what he was associated with? No.
No,
So,
but again, it took
yeah.
another like 200 years, even from
Yeah.
that first encounter to this one. So just the idea of how patient God is with
Mhm.
us. Like he doesn't want to overwhelm us with the entirety of this devotion just with one saint or at one time period. But this idea of like, okay, sit with this. The idea like
Mhm.
we did in that room, let's just sit with the heartbeat for a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, okay, they're ready for more. Okay, hey, St. John Eudes, here's an actual, like an image now of my Sacred Heart. So you just see the Lord slowly almost peeling back,
Mm.
really this divine mystery that he really is entrusting us with. And it really is himself also in a particular way. but I think the one that most of us are pretty familiar with when we hear of
Okay,
the
is this the
Sacred Heart. Exactly.
I'm waiting for the one that I actually know.
It is Saint Mary Alacoque, a French nun, and she is the one that I think all of us, when we hear Sacred Heart, we think of her.
Mhm,
She was in prayer in front of the Blessed Sacrament the one day, and she had this physical revelation of Jesus Christ actually fully approaching her. And then that's where we see more so the fire of the image being revealed to her and God speaking to her, expressing to her that I want all of humanity to experience my mercy, my compassion, my outpouring of my love in a way that's going to enkindle in them really the life I desire most for them. So she's kind of that second pillar, if you will, in which she
mhm,
provides for us a lot of the spirituality and a lot of the mysticism behind this Sacred Heart devotion that we're all been kind of now being entrusted with through her. So she provides us a
mhm.
lot of that insight through her personal encounter with Jesus Christ.
And she was given, was she given prayers and consecrations and promises? There's
Almost,
a lot
yeah.
more.
No, she actually, she's the French version of the Polish saint, Saint
Faustina,
Faustina.
yeah,
Yes.
that was the other thing I'm sitting here thinking, I was like, "Wow, this sounds a lot like Divine Mercy
Mercy,
and Saint Faustina,"
exactly,
but
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
No, so to your point, so if for Saint Faustina, we have her diary, almost those
Mhm,
back and forth conversations that they have with one another, and Saint Mary Alacoque is the same way. She has a whole diary in which she actually, recounts in beautiful detail what she said to Jesus and what Jesus said to her. So if you want to, you can read up that entire diary to actually just to almost be a part of that conversation as a third person, just to really go deeper into the beautiful, almost the voice of God, which is trying to show Saint Mary and of ultimately what it's going to be for all of us to receive.
mhm. Wow. Yeah. I think that I don't know if I've ever actually really heard of someone reading her diary. You hear a lot about
Correct.
Divine Mercy, and I just think it's so interesting that the bishops chose the Sacred Heart because they really could have chose a lot of
They
things.
could have.
Like, there's so many different things, but, why are the bishops and maybe a question for you, maybe it's rhetorical, maybe you have an idea, but, why do you think the bishops are really, choosing the Sacred Heart for this time in
Mhm.
American history? We're at 250 years, pretty sure at 150 years, maybe they would have chose something different, but, what about the Sacred Heart really is needed right now?
Yeah, part of the revelation that between Saint Mary Alacoque and Jesus was with all this was when humanity's heart has grown so cold.
Mhm,
It is now that I want them to experience my divine love and the flame of that love to be almost re-enkindled, almost resuscitated in a particular way. So, do we kind of see the world's heart growing a little cold? Is that what the bishops are experiencing in prayer to bring forward this devotion? Uh, Very possibly. I know we'll probably start seeing a lot more documents be written and
yep.
probably explaining why, but that always is at the heart of it is that our hearts grow cold and the Lord wants to essentially bring his heart to us to essentially rekindle that fire of his love.
That's making me think, I'm like, "Okay, in what ways has my heart grown cold?"
Yeah.
And, yeah, being able to reflect on that and, because I think so often you could really easily be like, "Well, yeah, have you seen the news? Have you looked at, what's going on in the world, what's going on in our country?" But, to just, go very personally and be
Mm,
like, "Okay, sure, I'm praying for my country, I'm praying for,
yeah.
everyone, but, where's my heart gone cold?
Right.
And how am I not carrying the fire of the love of Christ
Yeah.
within me?"
Well, and that to your point, that is always the beauty of Catholicism. It
Mhm,
is the individual, and obviously to your point, that self-reflection of just like, okay, where is my heart cold? Where do I want the Lord to maybe heal and pour out his mercy, his love, and where do I need that? But then also to exactly as you said, like, well, let's look at the world, and I think maybe that is what the bishops are addressing. It's like we see the world has gone cold.
mhm,
And that is always the beauty of these consecrations, because this isn't just a particular consecration that we are actually being invited to, but it is the entire United States.
Yeah.
So we almost see this being this, we have received these gifts for us to now share and lift up, because we need all of our brothers and sisters in Christ and the believers and non-believers to, I think, to encounter this very grace revelation that way. So I think the particular, yes, and then also, well, what about the universal? And I think that is more so now making this really public and being a universal invitation. We see more of that thrust with this.
Yeah.
Because a lot with this devotion, and it was Saint Claude de la Colomberie, butchered his name, but he's the one that was a spiritual director for St. Mary Alacoque. And so she's the one that actually shared a lot of these things with them, her writings, her journals, and he's the one that is actually credited with actually making it public.
Oh, yeah.
So, correct. So he's the one that really is like took everything that she encountered with the Lord, and he started being the one to help push and promulgate it and share it with the popes, and to be like, hey, these things are happening in our church. So we also see him as a saint now being, I think, what you and I are being invited into, not only with St. John Hughes with the prayers and St. Mary Alacoque with the spiritual aspect of it, but also to be like St. Claude, in which we're going to be the ones who kind of take it out into the world as well. So I think we see these three beautiful movements of what we're being invited to with the Sacred Heart devotion this year.
Yeah. And a little bit from you, like, where did the Sacred Heart, like, grip your heart? Because I know that on your white vestment, the like really, really beautiful one that you have that you'll wear upcoming for the Feast of Corpus Christi, I'm sure you have this beautiful Sacred Heart on it. And so you designed them.
Yes.
And you like picked out the different things. So you could have put a couple different things right there, but you chose the Sacred Heart. So
I did.
Where did that come from for you?
Growing up, I think just like a lot of these devotions and traditions, like, well, grandma and grandpa had a devotion to the Sacred Heart. Mom and dad had a devotion to the Sacred Heart. And in a particular way, I did in my own kind of capacity, probably not to the extent of, the 9 promises that we're supposed, or the 12 promises that Mary, and then
12.
There's 12 promises that Jesus gave to St. Mary Alacoque, and then there's like 9 things that we're supposed to do. Like, I didn't really go that deep into this devotion as far as my own personal journey goes, but part of it was to honor them in their devotion, because I am a recipient of my grandparents, my parents, and so much of their prayers and their devotedness that I felt as I was drawing closer to priesthood ordination that no, this is something the Lord desires for me as well, for me to encounter him in that way. And I love the Sacred Heart because it is an interesting devotion, especially when we see statues of it, which, by the way, St. Basil the Great and the Family Life Center, the Parish Center, we actually have a statue of the Sacred Heart. And it is
the Jesus in the back of the room.
Jesus.
I was like, what are you talking about? I've never
the Jesus in the corner.
I'm sitting here, I'm like, I've never seen a statue of just a heart. What are you talking about? Yes, the Jesus.
It's a big statue.
Yeah.
And it is gorgeous.
It is.
And what's particularly unique about all these images, you see Christ's heart on the outside of his body.
Yeah.
So to your point, I was just really always drawn into just the image of that heart. And my one nursing professor, Professor Demetrio, she once said that for you nurses, when I was in nursing school, she said, your hands are the extension of your heart. So the idea of, obviously, my hands are going to be consecrated by the bishop to obviously do priestly things, but then also those are an extension of my heart, but not just my heart that I brought to Jesus, his Sacred Heart. So really from just the family passing it on to me and me kind of receiving that into my life as a priest, just realizing like, well, that's what I want to be at the core of my priesthood, was the Sacred Heart of Jesus, to always be abiding in his heart and to be sharing that heart through me as well. But I guess what I'd be really inviting for people is not just to go deep into the spirituality of all this, but you have a heart, I have a heart.
Yeah.
These are good starting places for us. And I just want to share just even a couple stories of nursing. when I was at the Cleveland Clinic, I was a clinical technician. I was actually going to be graduating a nurse in about 6 months, and I was actually in the cardiac units. And we had a patient come up. I'm with the nurse. They're kind of precepting me and just sharing a lot. And so they're doing the initial assessment because they came back from surgery. And their chest was open. There was like a foam dressing. You couldn't see anything, but you could see the heartbeat.
Really?
Yeah. And so I look at my preceptor and I was like, can I touch it? And of course, they
Good
give me a
question.
look of, yeah, yes, gently.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, almost that little kid mode of like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And I remember putting the most gentle pressure
Yeah.
uh, on that heartbeat through the foam dressings and everything. But just what I felt initially was just awe. Like as soon as I touched it, I pulled my hand away because it was just, you felt this surge of power and electricity. And it was just like, it was overwhelming that I actually was like, pretty much touching a heartbeat. Um, so when I think of the Sacred Heart, I almost go back to that encounter, that experience I had. I even saw surgeons massaging hearts in surgery.
Oh
So,
my gosh.
so these are particularly unique to me.
Yeah. I know.
But when I think of the Sacred Heart, I'm immediately kind of drawn back to those real life encounters I had
Yeah.
with real hearts, being like, okay, Jesus, like reveal to me your Sacred Heart, but then what he also says, like, well, take that, but also what you experience and unite the two so that I can go back into a prayer of like the surging, the beating, the movements, all the times with the stethoscope. I listen to people's hearts, the irregular heartbeats, the times I saw them on monitors. So I think how God used so much of my nursing experience to help me better understand the devotion to his Sacred Heart. And that's always been a great area for me. And I guess I invite all of you who are listening to, well, you do have a heart also. So just what is your heart going through? Maybe you just got done running a marathon or working out. Like, just take a moment, pause with just like your racing heart right now, and then just like that's the moment of prayer. Like, Jesus, I unite my heart to your Sacred Heart. Please reveal to me more of your life. Or maybe we kind of in symbolic ways, oh, I have a breaking heart, I have an anxious heart, I have a heart that's overwhelmed. Well, that's what the Lord wants you to bring to him. So the idea of like his heart through all these images is being exposed and being an invitation, drawing close to us, but like, well, he wants us to bring our hearts to him. So I think for most people, it's just like whatever your understanding of heart is or your experiences of heart, like pray with those and then let that be what guides you into this mystery of the Sacred Heart.
Yeah. I just think that is a great. I don't even know what to say.
No, and I think that's the point of all this.
Yeah.
It is overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's like, can this really be true? And there is that apprehension because it's like we want it true, but then like there's that fear. And there's that like, oh, I have to be vulnerable. I have to trust. I have to be faithful. And it's like, that is probably at the very heart of this devotion.
Yeah.
God made himself vulnerable to us in the person of Jesus Christ, his son, opened up his heart for us in a very real physical way. And he's saying like, draw close to me. I'm not going to hurt you. I know what's going on with your heart. I can see it. I can feel it. Like, please come to me. So there's a real tenderness with this devotion, which the Lord just wants more than anything else
Hmm.
for us to come close to him. Not these perceptions of ourselves, these images of ourselves. No, Jesus is like, I want the real you. I'm showing you the real me, and I want this to encounter you in a personal way.
It does feel like so much more vulnerable, like, as we, kinda went through it and, you started off by saying it's the second most popular devotion behind the rosary, and I'm just sitting here, and as you're talking about, like, the vulnerability of showing our heart to him, I'm like, "Yep, it feels way more vulnerable than, like, holding my little rosary beads," and, like, can you have, like, really deep, beautiful experiences praying the
Yeah,
rosary in vulnerable moments? Yes. Does it feel as often as or as extreme even maybe as,
right.
like, I'm even hearing, just some of these moments of the heart and, like, our real heart that pumps the blood to our bodies and sustains our life.
Yeah.
And the differences between the beautiful devotion and the rosary. I love the rosary.
Right.
But and the Sacred Heart. It's so different.
Oh, it is.
And I think the bishops definitely knew what they were talking about when they were saying, we want the Sacred Heart to be the focus for this next year
Yeah.
for the church, what we're going to consecrate it for this huge anniversary, this big celebration. And
well, and I think to your point, and it's a good distinction to make, that yes, it is the second most popular devotion to the rosary. And let's just even focus on the rosary for a second. That a lot of these revelations through St. Dominic, and then the creation of the rosary and the prayers and the mysteries. And can you just say the rosary, praying the Hail Marys, praying the Our Fathers, saying the mysteries that we're going to? Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Like, we can just say these devotions. They are prayerful. They're efficacious. God is going to cooperate with us. Absolutely.
Well, and there's even some times where a rote prayer like the rosary is like this is all I can do.
Yeah.
Do I know that I'm invited to more? Yes. Am I trying to get it to the point where I can move to more? Yes. Am I at the point where I can move to more? No.
No.
So
Yeah.
I know that my prayers are efficacious. There's something happening with
Yeah.
me being faithful to praying the rosary.
Yeah, and again, you're right. If that's all I can do, and the Lord knows that, I understand that. Good. Don't stop doing it. But I think the desire for the Lord and for us is that we take the next step when we're ready.
Mhm.
And that is not just to say the mysteries, but to unite my life to this particular mystery, to unite my life to what is Christ going through or encountering or experiencing. And then that is meant to change me as I draw deeper in. And I remember the one night you were with Life Teen,
Mhm.
and you were talking about the rosary, and it was the sorrowful mysteries.
Mhm.
And I just was like, that was perfect explanation to teenagers. Was just
Mhm.
where are your sorrowful mysteries?
Mhm.
Where were these moments in your life that you could say, well, this isn't just Christ doing this. Well, I experienced this in a real way.
Mhm.
And to be able to create that bridge, that integration, that, hey, I'm going to be vulnerable.
Mhm.
And which is the desire for these devotions as we get to that level when we're ready. And I think if all you're starting out for this year, because you never maybe even heard of the Sacred Heart or prayed with the Sacred Heart, I would just encourage people, well, first just get an image of it, even if it's the
Mhm.
one here, but pray with the Sacred Heart. Just pray with his heart. There's so many prayers, whether it's the Litany of the Sacred Heart,
Mhm.
prayers of Sacred Heart, just start there and allowing those words to now become put on your mind and your heart as you're saying them until you're ready, I think. And the Lord always knows. He
Mhm.
knows when you're ready to take that next step, to be a little bit more vulnerable, to be a little bit more open, because the Lord never wants to overwhelm us.
Yeah.
And he always just wants us to take that next step of trust, to be able to encounter him in a more personal way. Because all this is meant to prepare us for, well, guess what? There's not just going to be an image of the Sacred Heart when we get to heaven. No, it is going to be his full Sacred Heart with nothing to mitigate it or minimize it. We will actually just be able to experience it in its fullness.
Mhm.
So really this year that we have is to almost get us ready, maybe for the rest of our lives, to be able to be ready that one day.
Yeah.
To say, yes, Lord, I want to experience this now for all eternity with you.
We just thank you so much, Father, for being on the podcast and sharing your heart and the Lord's heart with us and teaching us, and just the way you kind of guided us through everything too, with, all of the different movements of the Sacred Heart, and how, we can just very easily start with the image and
Yeah. Well, and I guess just to reiterate that, yes, get an image, start there, get a statue. If you really want to buy all the books and this year I'm going to study everything, well, good for you.
Yeah.
Go for it. Don't hold back. But also here at St. Basil, we're going to be doing prayer cards with prayers of consecration.
Mhm.
They're going to be on the back, so that at the very least, to be able to incorporate the Sacred Heart in a simple daily prayer, as we're challenging and inviting everybody into in a personal way. So if anything, all you got time for in a day is maybe just check your pulse,
Yeah.
and pray with, obviously, your being heart with the Sacred Heart. And those can even just be very spontaneous and very powerful prayers. So
Mhm.
it's not about having to always do everything. Just maybe sometimes those simple practices to get us leading us in that right direction. Can we close with the prayer of
Yeah.
consecration that St. Mary Alacoque wrote?
Yeah.
So this is the prayer, act of consecration to the Sacred Heart that St. Mary Alacoque wrote. It is a little bit lengthier, so if you want to print this one out to be able to say it every day, it's a great practice. But on our prayer cards, it'll be a little bit shorter of a version, so a little bit more concise. How you can put it in your car or your wallet, and it could just become one of your daily prayers. So let us begin. O Sacred Heart of Jesus, to thee I consecrate and offer up my person and my life, my actions, trials, and sufferings, that my entire being may henceforth only be employed in loving, honoring, and glorifying thee. This is my irrevocable will, to belong entirely to thee, and to do all for thy love, renouncing with my whole heart all that can displease thee. I take thee, O Sacred Heart, for the sole object of my love, the protection of my life, the pledge of my salvation, the remedy of my frailty and inconstancy, the reparation for all the defects of my life, and my secure refuge at the honor of my death. Be thou, O most merciful heart, my justification before God thy Father, and screen me from his anger, which I have so justly merited. I fear all from my own weakness and malice, but placing my entire confidence in thee, O heart of love, I hope all from thy infinite goodness. Annihilate in me all that can displease or resist thee. Imprint thy pure love so deeply in my heart that I may never forget thee or be separated from thee. I beseech thee, through thine infinite goodness, grant that my name be engraved upon thy heart, for in this place all my happiness and all my glory, to live and to die as one of thy devoted servants. We ask this through Christ our Lord.
Amen.
Sacred Heart of Jesus, have mercy
Mercy on
on me.
us. We hope you enjoyed this podcast from our parish. If something touched your heart, we encourage you to take it to prayer. To be notified of future podcasts, please hit that subscribe button and feel free to share this podcast with a friend. We would love to keep in touch. You can find us at basilthegreat.org. Until next time, St. Basil the Great, pray for us.